So today I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about this lovely weed that we love to hate, dandelion, and why it's so great for us, why you should wait to mow your lawn, especially if you're watching this in the springtime. Give it a few weeks, let those dandelions do their thing. There's a couple really good reasons why. And one that I don't have written down here, but that's super important and that has been coming up a lot, is that dandelions are the first food for the bee population, which there's been a lot of press about that the bees are struggling with their population due to all these pesticides that have been kind of seeping in, and especially this new class of pesticides called neonicotinoids, I believe, and they will specifically really harm bees. Not all pesticides have that compound in it, but many of the new ones do, and it's unclear with a lot of really common pesticides what their chemical mix is. So it's really important for bees to survive as pollinators, to maybe let those dandelions grow for a little bit. Birds are also a big fan of dandelions. They will come in and eat the seeds, which are great. And then, of course, I'm sure if you have any rabbits, they will eat the leaves. But the leaves are wonderful for us as well. Dandelion is a super medicinal plant. So not only is it wonderful for your pollinators and making sure all of your pretty flowers keep coming from year to year from all those little bees buzzing around, and food, not to mention, pretty important. But yeah, dandelion is also medicinal for us, not just what's outside. And it's pretty tenacious, right? Which I think should tell us a little bit something about how medicinal it is, right? It's so good for us, and it's abundant. Even though it is, it's annoying in that, it grows in cracks and it grows through rocks and all kinds of stuff. But that tells you how intense this plant is. And it's really fantastic. And I think the most annoying part for people, well, it's probably a combination of two things. Either the little seeds that kind of go everywhere, even though they're very pretty, or that taproot, right? When you're trying to pull it out, you've got this long taproot that goes in. But that is fantastic medicine. That root is super good for your health. So it's worthwhile kind of thinking about that, looking at dandelions in a new light. And they've been pretty resourceful, right? They've survived us, and they continue to come back all the time in the spring. And they come back in places where we think they shouldn't grow or that other plants won't, which is great. So they're very hardy. And what's really interesting about dandelions too is they're very medicinally, they're a little bit more mild, which is fantastic. So you can have a lot of them. And they're not only mild in terms of you can dose it pretty frequently, but also it's mild in terms of its action. So it's kind of this slow moving building herb, which is fantastic. It's such a wonderful plant. And it's perfect for springtime. That's often how it happens, right? Plants come into the season when we need them the most. So early spring is wonderful for dandelion because we're just kind of shaking off that winter tiredness and fatigue. And from a Chinese medicine perspective, winter is all about storage and kind of hunkering down and trying to make it through with the resources we have. And with spring, we're kind of taking that, we're kind of breaking through that, right? We're moving into new growth and movement, and this kind of push forward in terms of wanting more things in our life and to open back up. And dandelions, dietary-wise and medicinal-wise, really play off of that quite a bit. So we can see in the tendencies of dandelion, we've got drying and cooling. Drying is like an astringent quality. So a good way to think about this is like when you bite into citrus. And if you watch the video on spring foods, I might be repeating myself a little bit here, but repetition's good. So the drying foods are astringent, so they kind of make your mouth pucker a little bit. They kind of clean up any extra water or inflammation that's going on. So that's perfect when we're moving out of this more like stagnant kind of slow time of winter where maybe we've had a little bit too heavy food and it's kind of accumulated and we're not feeling so great. The dandelion will kind of pull all that extra kind of water and fluid out, which is really great. And then it's also cooling. So over the winter, sometimes if we're slow and sluggish, we can kind of get develop this heat, or we tend to eat more inflammatory foods around that time of year too, right? Heavier, denser stuff. Not necessarily inflammatory, but can be if you're sensitive to something. So the dandelion kind of just cuts right through that, right? Just like you feel like the citrus kind of cuts right through, and it's very kind of like, woo, you know, it wakes you up. The dandelion does the same thing to your system, but in a kind of a nice and gentle way. So those are those kind of drying and cooling actions of the dandelion. And then the taste is a little bit bitter, right? So bitter in Chinese medicine is a little bit more the taste of summer. So bitter is a very, very cooling taste. So it does decrease heat as well. And the bitter, if you've ever had dandelion greens, you might recognize that they are very, very bitter. That's what's amazing about dandelion too, is the entire plant is relevant for us. In many plants, you know, you only want to use the root, or you want to use the leaf, or, you know, sometimes just the flower. But for dandelion, every part of it works for us, which is really neat. The flowers are delicious and great on salad. You know, of course, you know, assuming these plants are pesticide free, right? You don't want to eat anything that you've sprayed or that has been in the past few years. And then the leaves are excellent. They have most of these medicinal properties here, as well as the root. And some people even like roasting the root for a coffee substitute, which would be a great thing to do for your liver, is to get away from the coffee, because it is really quite inflammatory. I know that's not a popular opinion, but it is something to think about, especially, you know, if you've got some hormonal issues, PMS, menopausal things coming up, that type of thing. The coffee really gums up the liver. So dandelion is really fantastic for cutting through all of that. So the trick with using the greens, if you are going to eat them, is to get them when they're really, really young. The bigger they get, the more bitter they get. So if you see a huge dandelion, don't eat those greens. They're, I mean, you can. They're just know that they're really bitter. So usually right about now, you know, like when you first start to see them, April, March, that's a really good time to go ahead and harvest those greens if you want to, and add them to your salads. They are really, really fantastic. Dandelion is super high in a lot of vitamins and minerals. Vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, carotenoids, which are a really nice antioxidant found in plants. You've heard of carotenoids probably from carrots too. So yeah, they're packed with all of these minerals and nutrients and vitamins that we need, which is great, you know, and they're in the form of this young, fresh, tender green that's delicious. You know, it's really inviting after winter is, you know, traditionally kind of known as, you know, you're eating a lot of kind of smoked and canned and not fresh things. So yeah, the beginning of these fresh greens can be really invigorating to the senses that way, and to the body, right? It kind of gives it that signal like, okay, we're moving into the spring here. So for some indications, some things that you might want to take dandelion for, and just in general, anybody can take this herb. It's fantastic, and again, it's super mild, so it's really not going to be an issue, you know, in terms of intensity, and it really doesn't interact with too much either, which is great. Of course, you probably want to do your own research on that too, but just know that it's a very gentle and typically very safe herb. So the indications, right? So we've got high blood pressure or fluid buildup. So we talked about that a little bit in the drying or the astringent quality. And dandelion is one of the first things I go to for blood pressure, among other things. So yeah, the blood pressure, what's amazing about dandelion is most diuretics that we use to prescribe for high blood pressure they waste potassium. So that means you're losing this really crucial mineral that actually makes your kidneys work and makes your circulatory system work, and even your heart. If potassium gets low enough, your heart won't beat correctly. So the diuretics can actually exacerbate any pre-existing cardiovascular stuff if you've got high blood pressure. Dandelion brings the blood pressure down by decreasing fluid buildup, but it spares potassium. And it's pretty amazing. It's really wonderful. So you're getting the benefit of this decreased blood pressure action, but keeping that potassium in there so everything continues to function well. This is also why it can be really helpful in pain situations or swelling, edema of any kind, because that astringent quality will move that extra fluid out out of the body for you. So yeah, I'd say its most common use is high blood pressure. I also really think about it for liver and gallbladder issues. So anything with kind of gallbladder sluggishness, it's really great for it. It kind of gently helps the gallbladder not only to produce bile, but to move bile through. So that's lovely. And also the bitter taste is it increases stomach acid. So bitter will increase stomach acid production, which is going to help digestion all the way down the line. We need to have enough stomach acid to really digest fully. So the bitterness, as well as a few of the other components, really help the whole digestive and glandular system here. So I think about dandelion definitely as a liver support. It protects the liver, it builds it up, it helps it function better, which is super important, because most of the time the liver is really, really overburdened with stuff. And I know I've said this a lot if you've watched other videos, but it's so true. The liver, it has to process all of our hormones, all the chemicals in the environment, all of our inflammatory processes that happen, all of the food from your digestive tract, all the blood from your digestive tract goes from the digestive tract into the liver first before it goes into normal circulation, right? To filter out any bacteria or viruses or possibly other stuff that got into our system that our body doesn't want floating around in normal circulation, where it can kind of sit or invade other tissues. So the liver is super, super important, and nowadays it's really overburdened with a lot of things, just ambient in our environment. So the more support we can give our liver, the better. And this time of year, spring in Chinese medicine is the season of liver and gallbladder. So those organs are going to be up and functioning a little bit more to begin with. They're going to be trying to really shake off whatever the winter's left around. So adding a little bit of an herbal support can be really wonderful here. So, and it does help to, I guess, quote unquote, detoxify the liver, but really your liver detoxifies itself all the time. It's just that there's a lot coming in and maybe not enough resources in the liver to help it move through completely. And that's what dandelion does, is it increases the liver's ability to deal with that toxic load. So it's a really, really lovely herb. And then of course, right, helps the gallbladder produce bile and move things through, and then stomach acid too. So I think about it for a lot of digestive things for people. And then skin issues, right? So it's a wonderful, wonderful help with skin, as well as a few other mild herbs like burdock. I really, really like burdock. And sometimes you can even get burdock root in the grocery store. Anyway, yeah, so it helps the skin because it helps the liver. Because the liver usually if you've got skin things going on, it means there's extra inflammation floating around in the body that is, it just can't be dealt with. So then your body shunts it out to the skin. And then that will show up as, eczema, psoriasis, acne, all kinds of irritations on the skin. So liver health is not always the bottom line with skin stuff. There's a lot of different causes, but usually it really does come back to liver and GI. Usually it's about inflammatory foods that you're eating in the GI, or inflammatory oils or processed food that shouldn't be coming in, or and then all of that has to go to the liver and then be detoxified and processed. And if there's a lot of preservatives or chemicals or weird stuff, that just gets hung up in the liver, and it takes a lot longer to move through. So usually if you have skin stuff, you start addressing the liver gently with a little bit of herbal support, and the skin can get better, and of course the GI. And there are other things that I would do before some herbal support, but dandelion, something like a dandelion tea, again, is so mild that it's really going to be fine. It's not gonna push that liver too much, which is another problem that comes up, especially when we look at spring and detoxification kits. I'm not a big fan, and I will do a video for you guys on those. I have some very different ideas around detoxifying that I think are a little bit more in line with what your body actually wants and what it actually needs. And that's super important to be able to listen to and respect the body, not just to say, hey, it's spring, there's, detoxing is really popular right around now, I should do it too. It's really not appropriate. And a lot of the ways it's done, it's not appropriate either. So yeah, we'll move it on to our last point here for dandelion. So arthritis, gout, and inflammation. It's really helpful for as well, this type of pain. So again, it's going to extract that extra fluid that happens in pain and inflammation. And then it's also got a few compounds that are specific for helping decrease pain, which is pretty neat. So yeah, so that's dandelion kind of in a nutshell. My favorite ways to take it would be a tea or a tincture. I think a tea is a really lovely and easy way to do it. And that's also something where it's easy if you want to, if you want to go all home herbalist, which is wonderful to do, you can just harvest your own dandelions. They are abundant. You really don't have to go anywhere to buy them. It's pretty cool. You can dry them. You can just wash the fresh leaves and make a tea out of them. That's totally fine. My favorite place to get dried herbs in bulk is Mountain Rose Herbs, and I'll put a link to that in the bottom of the video, but they have a great selection, and I just checked on their website. They have dandelion root, they have roasted dandelion root, they have dandelion leaves, they have all kinds of good stuff. They even have dandelion seeds if you want them. So yeah, making a tea would be fantastic. There's plenty of teas on the market already too that have dandelion in them. Usually the liver supportive and health ones. And again, if it's a tea, it's usually a mild enough dose. It's not going to do anything too intense for you. It's just a nice daily support for that liver and gallbladder system. And a tincture is always nice too. Those are alcohol-based things, so if you have any issues with alcohol, tinctures are not usually the best way to go. But again, also super easy to make yourself, which is very fun. And I just wanted to add one more thing too that I thought was really great, especially since we were talking about, bees and dandelions being around, and I get it. People don't want them in their yards. And with me saying like, oh, just leave them, I think there's a lot of hesitancy to do that. So I have a colleague who, I love her backyard. It's just like a wild kind of natural northwest forest. It's fantastic, and she specifically planted it that way and has maintained it that way. And what she does with her dandelions is she has this little walkway into her backyard, and she has planted or allowed dandelions to grow along that walkway. So they're lining the paths. In essence, she's got this really specific place that she wants dandelions to be in her yard because she sees the value in them. She will also craft her own medicine from them, which is awesome. So I thought that was a really neat way to incorporate dandelions. So that's always an observation or something that you can do and say, hey, where can I leave these? Where can I let these grow? Or put them in a couple planter boxes if you want them contained, something like that. And then pull the ones that are elsewhere. But I think the important point is to let some be there and grow for the bees and for the birds, so they have food in this early spring season. And then you can harvest the leaves, you can harvest the flowers, you can harvest the roots, all of that stuff, in your own kind of little designated area. So that's kind of my tip for maybe leaving some there in your yard and kind of making it pretty, right? But dandelions can be very, very pretty. That yellow is this beautiful, vibrant color. It's wonderful to see it in the spring. It's one of the first flowers that we see. So it can be nice to leave that there. Or, if you want, just hold off on mowing for a little bit and or mow around the dandelions and let the bees kind of do their thing that way. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was fun to kind of get to learn a little bit more about the background of this plant that might kind of annoy us, but is actually really super medicinal and is abundant everywhere and is easy to collect and easy to either make your own medicine or, buy again from mountainroseherbs.com. And incorporate it a little bit more into your life. Spring is the perfect season to add a little bit of dandelion in. Usually we've got enough stuff going on with the liver. It's nice throughout the year, but because it is astringent and cooling, it's specifically wonderful for more kind of spring and maybe into summer for you. So yeah, try it out. See what you think. Try a little bit of dandelion. Try the young leaves if you're brave enough. But try some dandelion tea and see what you think. See if it helps out with anything in general. It makes you feel more energetic or any of these issues if you've got them going on. Okay, thanks so much for watching.